Welcome back, Eddie Radosevich, Bob Przybylo here from the SoonerScoop.com studios on Campus Corner. Welcome back to the SoonerScoop.com YouTube page. And portal season, it is here. I was going to say it's upon us, but it is definitely here.
I never left it, man.
You never left the portal. It gets a little warm during the summer, but obviously Oklahoma's pursuit of Nijaree Canady, the big topic right now in the softball world. We caught up with D1 Associate Editor for D1 Softball, Justin McLeod, to get a little bit of insight into not just the portal, but Oklahoma wrapping up a four-peat. Obviously, the big news around here. Still a little bit of a celebration, I would think, right?
A little bit.
Somewhat. Oklahoma's moving on, though. They have obviously a lot of holes to fill, especially in the circle. And, is Canady going to be a part of the Oklahoma softball program? Who else is going to be a part of the Oklahoma softball program, as there's more than just one spot to fill? Here is our interview with Associate Editor from D1 Softball, Justin McLeod. Now joined by Justin McLeod here from Associate Editor, really, from D1 Softball. Justin, I appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. You spent a lot of time here in Oklahoma City at the College World Series. We'll kind of start there. That's still the talk of the town. We'll get to the portal stuff, obviously, here in a second, because that's obviously big news. But Oklahoma finishing off the four-peat, I think for a lot of people around here, it's just become kind of one of those things. And Bob has covered it, year in and year out, just where it's like Oklahoma's going to win the national championship, no worries. For Oklahoma to do this, to complete the four-peat, I guess just from the outsider perspective, what was it like watching this group kind of finish off what was a historic senior season?
Well, I think we miss so often that the reason it's never been done before is because it's really hard to do. And I think that's the thing for me when I sit there and I watch that senior class and I watch OU this year. This was the most impressed I've been with an OU team in the last 4 years. Because there were some hard times, there were some struggles in the midst of, and I mean, for Oklahoma, struggling with losing 7 games in the season,
right?
But there were those moments, there were those, the Texas series, the Oklahoma State series, the BYU game, there were those moments. But I think that's the thing that stands out to me the most is it would be real easy for the first time adversity struck after 3 straight national championships, even a team as talented and as good as OU, it would be real easy to, I'm not going to say collapse, but to not know how to respond to a punch in the face. And not only did they respond, they ended up winning the national championship anyway. And so to me, like you mentioned, like from that outsider perspective, softball as a whole, this was the most impressed I've been with an OU team. And watching that happen at the World Series, that was an impressive team. Like there were times where, who was going to pitch besides Kelly Maxwell? Well, they found somebody, and sometimes who was going to pitch besides Kelly Maxwell was nobody. Like they did what they had to do. It was really special, and I was, like I said, most impressed with them that I have been all these 4 years.
When you look at this team, Justin, and you look at all these seniors, do you think we'll ever see another senior class like this? Not only in terms of the winning and the championships, but because of the transfer portal, also staying together through everything.
No, I don't think we will, and I mean exactly for what you just said. I mean, do I think we'll see another senior class that wins 4 national championships? I don't think it's likely. Sure, it could happen. I don't think it's likely. But a senior class staying together like that one did, the combination of all of those things, I just don't see it. I think that's an anomaly. I think it's one of those things that, again, I don't think we realize how special it is in the moment. And it was pretty special. That was a pretty special group.
I think we joked a lot, and especially when it kind of seemed like that Sunday in Bedlam when they got things going leading into the postseason. We always joked that like OU softball in a way has kind of become this evil empire because it's been a harbor of not necessarily fugitives, but portal entries. Obviously, Kelly Maxwell and what she was able to do coming from Stillwater to Norman. Just in terms of, I guess, how good she had been, because obviously Oklahoma was coming off of Jordy Ball. For her to step into that role, how impressive was that? And there were some low points in the year where, I think there was a lot of people that had to have some like kind of uncomfortable questions. Can Kelly Maxwell get this Oklahoma team over the hump?
No, those questions were absolutely there. I mean, I think when you look at Kelly in 23, she had her struggles. She had a good bit of struggles. Even going back to that Bedlam series, if you remember, she came in to close what should have been an OSU win, and it ended up being an OU win instead. So I think coming into the year, we knew how good Kelly was because of how good she's been for 4 years. but it was like, okay, well, can she handle this? Is it the pressure? Can she be the ace? Is it going to be, just one of many? And honestly, again, kind of like I said with OU as a whole, I was probably most impressed with Maxwell this year, just because a lot of things that could have gone wrong didn't. She could have collapsed. Those struggles in 23 could have been what told the end of her story, and instead she turned it around. I was incredibly impressed with Maxwell this year. That's a hard role to step into, because if you don't win anything other than the national championship is a disappointment when you've won three in a row. And even though she hasn't won three in a row, OU has. So that's the pressure. It's stepping into the ace role that Jordy had, but it's also anything under a national championship is a disappointment. That's a really hard level to reach, and she did it. I was incredibly impressed.
Because you travel so much, love to get your thoughts on this. Lovefield is something obviously that OU worked so hard to try to get done, and now that you've been able to go to it, you've been able to see it. What would have been your thoughts, and how important is it for that type of facility to grow the game of softball?
Oh, I loved it. It was one of those things where I just seeing it and the similarities that I've been to. I love the architecture of some of the pieces. The little things. It's a great stadium. I love the surround sound of the outfield stands and those kinds of things. But even the little things like down the where the stands kind of jut in a little bit, like just those little things that really make it state of the art. Like I just love those. It's huge for softball. It's huge. Um, you look at Hall of Fame Stadium or Devon Park now,
We do
in
the same.
Oklahoma City, yeah, where the World Series is. And it's the that's the top dog. That's the one. Seating wise and what they do for the World Series, you're not touching that. But I think from an everyday softball stadium constructed to be a fast pitch stadium, nobody's touching Love's Field right now. Like I've been to Davis Diamond in Aggie Land. It's beautiful. The Jumbotron gives me a headache, but it's beautiful in general. Um, Still, nobody's touching Love's Field. And I think that's so important for softball because now the gold standard is on a higher level. So now build a new stadium or add renovations. Now what they're trying to reach and the level they're trying to achieve is higher. And all that does is it makes the game as a whole better.
How much has the softball portal, and we'll kind of start moving into the portal stuff because obviously Oklahoma's losing a lot of players off of last year's team, specifically in the circle. I think there's a name out there. But just in terms of before we get to Nijaree and Canady, how much has the portal changed the sport of softball just in general? I think there's a lot of people that, especially for us that are familiar with it with the football side of things. Basketball is obvious. Baseball even. Softball, it seems like, has started to grow pretty big and almost not necessarily dependent upon it, but it has become a major player just like it has it across the landscape of college athletics.
No, it's really become such a major piece of college softball. Just even before Nijaree Canady, even before Jordy Ball went in, if you look at how many different teams had to go from, or not had to, but did go from, recruiting the traditional way to being okay being Portal U. And that's not an insult. I mean, some people don't like it. I understand that. But if that's the way you want to build your team, that's great. It's still hard to do. You've got to bet on what you're seeing on a visit. You've got to bet on the stats that you're seeing. Like you still got to bet on certain things being right. You get a little more proof in the pudding than you do when a kid's in high school or travel ball, but it's still a gamble sometimes. It's really changed softball, I think, more than we initially thought it would when the portal came about. Just because in softball, it's still if you want to call it at that point, still a growing sport. I think right now we're still growing, but we've grown so much since the portal came around. I think initially okay, what's the portal going to do for softball? What's it going to mean for softball? And now, what is it, 6 years later, you have the Jordy Balls, you have the Nijaree Canadys going into the portal. Wherever they land up, Jordy Ball, I know we didn't get to see her this year, but I don't think there's any doubt that when she takes the circle for a full season for Nebraska, that's an absolute game changer, both initially and now we've seen it just explode. I mean, you've got hundreds and a couple of thousand kids in some years, and we've just seen it explode.
We mentioned Ball from last year. Obviously, that leads to Canady with this year. Did you see this coming?
Yeah, I think it did. I mean, you kind of hate to say that, but yeah, you kind of read the writing on the wall a little bit. I mean, you think about it, without taking away from Elena Vaughter last year and the players that did provide the runs that Stanford scored, really it was Niger that got Stanford to two World Series semifinals. So I mean, I think at some point, the age and the day knew it was coming. Um, there were rumors about it last year. It didn't happen. So I actually will say I was slightly less confident about it this year than I was last year. I thought it might happen. Um, Plus, I mean, you're 2 years into a Stanford degree versus 1 year in. That's a little different too. So I was slightly less confident. But I really felt like it was going to come at some point. Just because her going in is such a game changing thing.
Unfortunately for the world of softball, I would imagine it just so happens Oklahoma now has a pretty big opening in the circle. Oklahoma is obviously, yeah, I think I would imagine that anywhere they walk into, they could have a pretty good head start on everybody else. Just in terms of Oklahoma's level of interest, I know there's a lot of rumor and innuendo. I know the Canady camp is rather quiet at the same time. How do you kind of foresee this unfolding here as we get into I guess, kind of she can go anywhere now with being in the portal?
So I did a satellite radio hit on Monday morning, and they asked me if you had Oklahoma or the field, who are you taking? And I said Oklahoma, but not it's not a foregone conclusion. And I
Sure.
think that's pretty much still where I am. You're right. The Canady camp's been very quiet. I think we're going to still see them to be that. But I also said the same thing in that same radio hit. Canady, I want the best coaches and the best programs in the country to tell me why they want me, to tell me how special I am, because I think Nijaree Canady's earned that.
Sure.
2 years in, I think she's earned that. So I still, if you gave me Oklahoma versus the field, I'd still take Oklahoma. Just a variety of things. I mean, even in the sense of once somebody gets there, what the potential NIL is for softball, like the support for Oklahoma softball is more than any other program has. So just the potential of what's there once you get to Norman. I would still take Oklahoma versus the field, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I think there are some other programs that are in position to be to you add a pitcher like Kennedy, it's a game changer. Um, and World Series team becomes World Series favorite if you get her type. I think, and then you add in who can afford NIL. I think there are still some programs that can do that
Sure.
besides Oklahoma. But for me, if you give me Oklahoma versus the field, I'm probably still taking Oklahoma by a margin.
I would imagine a bunch of those schools are the schools that were just here in Oklahoma City. Throw out a Florida, Florida State, Texas. Would that be about right? Maybe a Tennessee even.
Yeah, Texas A&M and LSU are two others that I've thrown in there.
Okay.
Because my thing is, I think this is the one. This is the player. Nijaree Canady, I think, is the player where a softball coach goes to a football NIL donor, goes to the big dogs and says,
Yeah.
"Hey, this one's a game changer. We
Right.
need this one." Like that. That's the situation I think now you could see, because I think that's how big of a deal Nijaree Canady would be for any of those programs. So I look at, okay, what programs are in that position of being, a World Series team ready to become a World Series favorite with a pitcher like Canady, but also what teams are there that can reach out to those major players around and be a major player. Yeah, I'm in. So I've said there's probably 7 or 8 teams I could see being in that mix, those boxes. And yeah, you pretty much hit it. Those that have just been at the World Series, you throw in an A&M and an LSU.
Sure.
And I'm not asking you to give us a commitment date, but knowing what you know about Nijaree, how long do you think this process might take?
I mean, I think we're talking about a couple of weeks. I don't think it's a quick thing. And again, going back to what I said a bit ago, if I'm Nijaree Canady, I'm taking all my visits and I'm letting the best coaches in the country wine me and dine me and tell me how great I am. And
Absolutely.
from the outsider's perspective, I have no issue with that. So I think you got to give time for that. You got to give time for those things to happen. But I don't think it's going to be an elongated process either, just because both from a team and a Nijaree perspective, you want to get it done. You don't want to be out there forever. And then Nijaree's got some Team USA commitments too, that you kind of have to work around. So either you're potentially talking about deciding quickly ahead of that, or maybe deciding while you're overseas, or that affects the timeline too. but I don't anticipate it being a super short or a super long time. I think we're probably somewhere in the middle, matter of a couple of weeks.
Oklahoma is in a little bit of a situation, too, that it's not just one portal addition. There's going to be multiple. In terms of, everything that they have to fill right now, have you heard anything? Is there anything out there on maybe some other folks that would be looking to join the Oklahoma program? Obviously, you don't have to do a whole lot of selling, I would imagine, if you're Patty Gasso.
But I know they've been in for quite a few pitchers. I mean, we all know there's some pitching depth needed there. One name I'll give you that I really like that I think fits the OU mold and that I have heard could be in play is Abby Dayton, an outfielder from Utah, a tremendous young player. And she was on that Utah World Series team, but Utah kind of, backslid a little bit this year, weren't as much in the forefront. She's a tremendous young player, though. And I think she fits that OU mold pretty well. So she's one that I've heard that I also think, I could see her winding up in Crimson and Cream. I know there have been quite a few. I've heard of quite a few offensive players from various positions, but just that would make a difference with the bat in play for OU. So I think it's one of those things. And we all know, I mean, with the spots that OU has available and what they just lost, you pretty much could take somebody anywhere. There's a role for them right now.
Sure.
Even with the freshmen coming in, if you bring in, get 2 freshman catchers, we'll bring in a catcher. That's not really an issue type deal. So I've heard about OU being in play for quite a few. Dayton's a name I would keep an eye on. And then this Canady, with what other pitchers are out there, it's a little bit of a dwindling crop.
Sure.
And so I think that makes it interesting too, because you're starting to see these other pitchers. I mean, you just had 2 pitchers from UNC Wilmington commit to Florida and Alabama. Like they were very good at UNC Wilmington. I'm not taking anything away by any means, but you just took 2 pitchers from UNCW off the table, and they're both in the SEC now. So what the pitching crop looks like post or around Canady gets real interesting, I think.
Needless to say, and last one for me, it sounds like if you, and as Oklahoma makes this move to the SEC and as well as Texas, it seems like if you just want to pick a SEC town or a location every weekend during the spring next year, you're going to have a team that you probably would have a chance to get to a super regional or up to Oklahoma City by the end of the year.
Oh, absolutely. I think the SEC tournament might be the World Series light, maybe the World Series heavy, if we're going to be honest. Yeah. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility at this point.
It's unbelievable. It's crazy. Looking at baseball, too, it's absolutely insane. We appreciate it. Justin, where can we find and read most of your stuff over at D1 Softball, obviously, but also on Twitter?
So D1Softball.com, like you say, D1 Softball on all the socials, and I'm at JustFactsMa'am on Twitter, all the portal, a little bit of everything this time of year.
I like it. He is Justin McLeod, Associate Editor of D1 Softball. And, man, we appreciate your time. It's going to be interesting to see how this Canady stuff goes down as well as the rest of the Oklahoma roster getting filled out. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys.
Really interesting stuff from Justin. And once again, thank you to Justin McLeod, D1 Softball Associate Editor, jumping on with us. He was actually up at a softball game, the OKC Spark. Riley Boone, a lot of former Oklahoma players playing over in Chattanooga. So special thank you to him joining us today. It sounds interesting. I mean, Oklahoma's certainly, I think if you could say anything about this, Oklahoma's definitely in this thing.
Definitely in it. And again, I'm so glad he said it because sometimes I say it doesn't resonate as much. This wasn't going to be like a 48-hour process.
Sure.
It's going to take a little bit of time. And I know maybe some people are hoping to be wrapped up by this week.
Yeah.
Just be patient. I'll let you know when you can hit the panic button. That's why I keep putting in the portal thread. It's like, I'm not hitting it. No one's scared, but let the process play out the way it's supposed to.
Patience. That's the hardest part about the portal.
It's hard.
I think everybody knows, whether it be basketball, which went well in the women's side. Football, same thing. Dominic Williams was a little bit of a drama-filled affair. And I think that that's what happens.
You just don't know. Do you be like Kenny Gajewski and you attack the portal while you're still playing?
Yeah.
Or do you wait till your season is over and then try to see what's left? The mentality, the mindset, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just what you decide to do.
No doubt. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be kind of fun to follow. Make sure you're hitting up, as he said, the Crimson Corner, all of the goods over on SoonerScoop.com. And we'll just have to be waiting and see. And when something does happen, guess what? We'll jump back on and we'll talk about it. It would be a great thing if Oklahoma could. I really do think like they'd become some type of like evil empire if they end up landing Canady. Oh, yeah. And who else? We'll see. I mean, as Justin said, Oklahoma softball, pretty good product to sell right now. For Bob Przybyla, I'm Eddie Radosevich. We'll see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube page.